Hello and welcome to another episode of the Confident Musician Show. You are tuning into 5 pro tips of how to be more vulnerable and remain strong. I am your host, Brett Cusack, aka Megalove, and I'm a musician and mindset coach. And at The Confident Musician, we help musicians to overcome self-doubt and overwhelm and create more confidence than you ever thought possible so you can make music, make a difference, and share your unique talents with the world. Alrighty, 5 pro tips on how to be vulnerable and remain strong. Tip number 1 is that life will make you happy, but first it will make you strong. So learning to share your adversity and inspire others is a really, really powerful tool. So stepping through your fears to do more of what you love is an important part of your journey. So learning to be vulnerable is probably the most strong thing that you can do. And actually being able to lean into your fears and your emotions and all of these things that generally we get taught to squash as a child is a really, really important part of being an adult, I believe, so that you can actually learn how to be a human and actually acknowledge that you don't have it all sorted. And then this is, I think, one way that we can really, really connect and be part of any great relationship is to share these vulnerable moments. Tip number 2 is to pick your battles. And what is your intention behind being vulnerable with another person or online or whatever it might be? So you also want to acknowledge that there are both positives and negatives to everything that we do in life. This is what I call preflecting. So when you actually sit down and actually go, what are all the positives and negatives of this situation or strategy that I might be able to use out there? So what we want to do here is we want to make sure that we're avoiding any feedback loops where we get acknowledgement and validation for anything that might distract you from your music. So an example of that might be that you're sharing about your frustrations with governments or whatever, and you might get feedback loops with people support and acknowledge you for that. And you're like, oh, wow, I get actually acknowledgement and support for that. But you're not actually getting acknowledgement and support for your music. So that's a really important part of when we're thinking about sharing, not so much about being vulnerable. But yes, we want to make sure that we are picking our battles and making sure that we acknowledge both the positives and negatives of that. Because sometimes just sharing it with yourself is probably a better scenario, or having a strategy for actually sharing it with yourself or with a close friend before we put it out there in the world. Tip number 3 is to find a safe space before we do tip 2, or picking your battles, to share where you're feeling first. And someone that can actually hold space for you without judgment and can really just listen. And the best people that do that, the people that I go to, the people that can just listen and then not say anything at the end, so that I can just share what's happening for me and I can get all my emotions out and process whatever's happening for me, and I'm not being judged for it. I'm just having somebody listen to me. So, and the key is to, what we really want to do here is to avoid any unsolicited advice, especially from people who aren't doing what it is that we're doing. So friends and family sometimes may not be the best people to ask for advice or to give advice, especially when you're not asking for it, because they may not be behaving in your best interest, especially, and I generally don't take advice from anybody who isn't doing what it is that I want to be doing more of. Tip number 4 is people will always connect with your most authentic self. So finding the right balance of that vulnerability and that self-confidence and belief is really important. If you're only always being vulnerable but not giving us something a story of transformation or something like that, I'm probably less likely to want to listen to your next vulnerable story. And I always I try my best not to share or be vulnerable when I'm in the middle of something. So I love to be vulnerable, but I also love to share it when I'm on the other side of it and I've actually done the work in behind the scenes, and then be able to share it when I've actually got a story of transformation. So this is what it was like for me, and this is what I did, and then that's how I like to share things. So, at the end of the day, I'm a whole human being, and I have my own challenges that I'm going through at every stage, and I don't pretend to have everything sorted. And so I always avoid anybody that thinks or pretends that they have everything sorted, because they don't. Those people do not exist. So tip number 4 is to connect with people doing and being a whole human being. And tip number 5 is to get a coach or a mentor to help you create a safe space to discover who you truly are. And that's why I've created my latest training to help you uncover the problems behind the problems. And it's called Confidence and Happiness Secrets for Musicians. And you can get it on the link below this video. All right, let's do our recap of our tips. Tip number 1 is life is going to make you happy, but first it's going to make you strong. So learning to share your adversity and inspire others is a very, very powerful tool. And stepping through your fears to do more of what it is you love is an incredibly important part of your journey. You don't skip levels. Tip number 2 is to pick your battles. What is your intention behind sharing? So acknowledge that there are both positives and negatives of everything that we do in the life. So we want to choose the thing that is going to give us the most inspiration and confidence and creativity with what we want to do more of. And avoid creating any feedback loops where you get acknowledgement and validation for anything that might distract you from your music. Tip number 3 is to find a safe space to share where you're feeling first. And with that space, you want to make sure that that person is somebody who can just listen without judgment and then not say anything at the end. And that is probably extremely rare, but you might preface that as like, I just want to share this and I don't need any advice. I just want to get it out. And can you please not offer me any advice at the end? And then see how that goes. That might be more challenging than I give it credit. And avoid any environments where people do give you unsolicited advice, especially people that are not doing what it is that you want to be able to do or aren't further along their journeys than you are. Tip number 4 is people are always going to connect with your most authentic self. So please find the right balance of that vulnerability, and that self-belief and confidence is very, very important. Tip number 5 is to get a coach or a mentor to help you create a safe space to discover who you most authentically are. And if you would love some support and guidance along your journey, I would love to help. And so you can book a quick Q&A 15-minute call, no obligations, where we can have a conversation about what your challenges are, what you would love help with, and I can explain a little bit more about how our programs work. I would love to speak with you and connect with you about what it is that you're doing so I can help you make music and make a difference. If you've loved this video, please let us know in the comments below what you found useful, valuable, or interesting. And if you know somebody else who might benefit from these 5 pro tips, tag them in this video or share it with them in a DM. Until next time, my name is Brett Cusack, aka Megalove, musician, mindset coach for musicians, and I will see you on the next one. Make music, make a difference, and I will catch you later. Bye-bye.